The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched for miles beneath a dome of pure crystal. 12 different alien species sat in their designated seats, each more advanced than the last. The air hummed with translation devices that turned every word into something each species could understand. Ambassador Zextheri stood at the center of the hall. His purple skin gleamed under the artificial lights, and his 4 arms moved gracefully as he spoke. The Valoran Empire had sent him with urgent news, and everyone could see the worry in his large black eyes. "Fellow council members," Zextheri began, his voice carrying across the massive chamber, "I bring disturbing news from the Outer Rim territories. The Kythera swarm has changed course. They are no longer heading toward the Andorian colonies." A ripple of relief passed through the assembly. The Andorians were valued trading partners, and their crystal mines supplied half the galaxy with energy cores. Elder Counselor Mordun of the Crystalline Collective leaned forward, his body made entirely of living diamond catching the light. "That is good news, Ambassador. Where are the Kythera heading now?" Zextheri's expression grew darker. "They have set their sights on a small system in the outer spiral arm, a yellow star with several planets. The 3rd planet is inhabited." "Which civilization?" asked Counselor Vex of the Aquatic Federation, her gills fluttering with concern. "That is the problem," Zextheri replied. "It is not a civilization as we know it. The planet is called Earth, and it is inhabited by a species that calls themselves humans." Silence fell across the Great Hall. Many of the council members had never heard of Earth or humans. Those who had simply shook their heads sadly. Counselor Thex of the Hive Worlds buzzed his wings in what passed for a sigh among his people. "How advanced are they?" Mordun asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer would be disappointing. "Barely spacefaring," Zextheri admitted. "They have managed to leave their planet and build small stations in orbit, but they have no faster-than-light travel, no energy shields. Their weapons are primitive chemical explosives and simple projectiles. They know nothing of the galaxy beyond their own system." Counselor Yith of the Mind Collective projected his thoughts directly into the translation matrix. "How long until the Kythera arrive at their world?" "Our calculations show approximately 1 Earth month." The council members exchanged glances. Everyone knew what this meant. In the past solar cycle, the Kythera swarm had consumed 17 inhabited worlds. Each time, the pattern was the same. The biomechanical ships would arrive, establish orbital superiority within hours, then send down harvester drones to strip the planet of all organic matter. What remained was a lifeless rock, useful only for mining operations. "Poor creatures," said Counselor Nex of the Ethereal Dominion, her translucent form shimmering with what might have been sadness. "They have no idea what is coming for them." "The Kythera have never failed to consume a world once they set their course," added Counselor Rax of the warrior clans. "These humans will not even know they are under attack until the harvester drones are already on their surface." Mordun stood, his crystalline body reflecting the lights of the chamber in all directions. As the eldest member of the council, his words carried great weight. "In my 3,000 years of service to this council, I have seen many tragedies. But there is something particularly heartbreaking about a species dying in ignorance. These humans will never understand why their world ended. What do we know of their culture?" asked Counselor Zara of the Nomad Fleet. Zextheri consulted his datapad. Long-range scans show they're divided into multiple nation-states, often in conflict with each other. They have not achieved global unity. Their technology suggests they have barely entered their atomic age. They use fossil fuels for energy and still fight wars with projectile weapons. Typical of a primitive species, Thex buzzed. "No doubt they will waste their final days fighting among themselves instead of preparing for the real threat." "Not that preparation would matter," Rax added grimly. "The Kythera consumed the Altrian Empire, and they have been spacefaring for 10,000 years. They had energy weapons that could crack planets and shields that could stop solar flares. It took the Kythera less than a week to strip their 12 worlds bare." The mention of the Altrian Empire sent a chill through the assembly. The Altarians had been one of the most advanced species in the galaxy, second only to the mythical predecessors who had vanished eons ago. If the Kythera could consume them so easily, what chance did primitive humans have? "There is something else," Zextheri continued. Our deep space monitors have detected unusual energy signatures from a human homeworld. They appear to be conducting nuclear tests. Nuclear weapons? Mordunn's voice carried a note of surprise. That is unusual for such a young species. Perhaps they are more aggressive than most developing civilizations, suggested Nex. Some species do develop weapons before they develop wisdom. It will not matter, Rack said flatly. Nuclear weapons are useless against Kythera bioships. Their hulls can regenerate faster than atomic fire can burn them. The council fell silent again, each member lost in their own thoughts. They had seen this scenario play out many times before. A young species would be discovered by the long-range scouts, cataloged, and filed away for future contact once they achieved faster-than-light travel. But sometimes the Kythera found them first. Should we warn them? Asked Zara quietly. The question hung in the air like a physical presence. Counselor Vex's gills fluttered rapidly, a sign of distress among her people. The Prime Directive forbids direct interference with pre-FTL civilizations. The Prime Directive was written to protect developing species from cultural contamination. Mordunn replied, not to let them die in ignorance. What good would a warning do? Vex demanded. We would only cause panic in their final days. Better they live in peace until the end comes. Perhaps, said Yith, his mental voice carrying undertones of deep sadness. But every sentient being deserves the chance to face their fate with dignity, to die fighting if that is their choice. Zextheri looked around the great hall at the assembled representatives of galactic civilization. These beings commanded technology that could reshape stars and move planets. Their combined fleets could patrol 1,000 systems simultaneously. But against the Kythera swarm, even they felt powerless. I propose we take a vote, Mordunn announced. All in favor of sending a warning to the humans? One by one, lights appeared above each council member's seat. 7 in favor, 5 against. It was decided. Very well, Mordunn said. Ambassador Veltar of the Diplomatic Corps will carry the message to Earth. May the cosmic winds have mercy on those poor souls. As the council session ended and the members filed out of the Great Hall, none of them could have imagined how wrong they were about the humans. In one Earth month, everything they thought they knew about warfare, survival, and the nature of civilization itself would be turned upside down. The humans were about to teach the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. Captain Jake Morrison had been drinking coffee and watching Earth rotate below when the impossible happened. The International Space Station sensors started screaming warnings, and a ship that definitely wasn't human appeared right in front of them. Jake nearly choked on his coffee as he stared through the cupola window. The alien vessel was sleek and silver, about the size of a football field, with curves that seemed to flow like water frozen in time. It had no visible engines or weapons, but it moved with purpose toward their small station. Houston, we have a problem, Jake said into his radio, trying to keep his voice steady. A really big problem. Dr. Maria Santos, the station science officer, floated up beside him and gasped. Is that what I think it is? Unless we're both having the same hallucination, yes. Back on Earth, Mission Control erupted into chaos. Every screen in the room showed the same impossible image transmitted from the station's cameras. General Chris Baker was the first to break the stunned silence. Get me the president. Now! Within minutes, every world leader was connected to an emergency conference call. President Susan Hayes sat in the White House Situation Room, staring at the live feed from the space station. Around the table sat the Secretary of Defense, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and Dr. Lisa Park, the world's leading expert on theoretical alien life. Is it hostile? President Hayes asked. We don't know, Dr. Park admitted, but the fact that it appeared without any visible propulsion system suggests technology far beyond ours. On the space station, Jake watched as a section of the alien ship opened like a flower blooming in fast motion. A smaller craft emerged and began moving toward their docking port. They won't come aboard, Jake reported. Absolutely not, General Baker's voice crackled through the radio. Do not allow that thing to dock. With respect, General, Jake replied, I don't think I have a choice. They could have destroyed us already if they wanted to. The fact that they're asking permission suggests they might be friendly. President Hayes made the decision that would change human history. Let them dock, Captain Morrison, but keep the communication channel open. We want to hear everything. The alien craft attached to the station's docking port was a soft click that somehow seemed to resonate through the entire structure. Jake and Maria waited in the docking bay, floating in zero gravity with their hearts pounding. The airlock cycled, and then it opened. The being that emerged was tall and graceful, with pale blue skin and large, dark eyes. It wore what looked like a form-fitting uniform covered in symbols that seemed to shift and change as they watched. Most importantly, it raised its hands in what appeared to be a universal gesture of peace. "Greetings," it said, and somehow Jake understood the words perfectly even though he was sure the creature wasn't speaking English. "I am Ambassador Veltar of the Galactic Council. I come with urgent news for your species." Dr. Park's voice came through Jake's earpiece, barely controlling her excitement. "Asking about the translation. How are we understanding each other?" "The translation matrix allows us to communicate across species barriers," Veltar explained, apparently hearing the question. "But I fear you will not find my message pleasant. Your world is in great danger." Jake felt his stomach drop, and it wasn't because of the zero gravity. "What kind of danger?" "There is a force in the galaxy known as the Kythera Swarm. They consume entire worlds, leaving nothing but empty rock behind. Our long-range sensors show they are heading for Earth. They will arrive in approximately 23 of your days." The silence that followed was broken only by the hum of the station's life support systems. On Earth, every world leader listening to the transmission felt the same cold fear creeping up their spine. "How do we fight them?" General Baker asked through the radio. Veltar's large eyes seemed to grow even sadder. "In my 3 centuries of service to the Council, I have never seen anyone successfully resist the Kythera. They have consumed 17 worlds in the past solar cycle. Advanced civilizations with technology far beyond yours have fallen in days." "Then why are you here?" President Hayes asked. "If there's no hope, why warn us?" "Because every sentient being deserves to face their fate with dignity," Veltar replied. "The Council voted to give you this chance, even though we know it is likely futile." Jake looked at the alien ambassador floating before him and felt something he had never experienced before, a mixture of gratitude and burning anger. Grateful that these beings had cared enough to warn Earth, angry that they seemed to have already written humanity off. "Tell us everything," Jake said. "About the Kythera, about your technology, about anything that might help us survive." Veltar hesitated. "Your species has not achieved faster than light travel. The Council's laws forbid sharing advanced technology with pre-FTL civilizations. Your laws are about to become irrelevant." General Baker's voice cut through the radio with military precision. "If we're all going to die anyway, what difference does it make?" "The General has a point," President Hayes added. "We need every advantage we can get." Over the next several hours, Veltar shared what information he could. The Kythera were a hive mind species that had converted their biology into living machines. Their ships could regenerate damage almost instantly. They reproduce by consuming organic matter and converting it into more of their kind. "They have never shown mercy," Veltar explained. "They do not negotiate. They simply arrive, consume, and move on to the next target." Dr. Park had been furiously taking notes. "What about their weaknesses?" "Every biological system has vulnerabilities. If they have weaknesses, no one has found them," Veltar admitted. "The Altrian Empire had weapons that could crack planets. The Kythera consumed all 12 of their worlds in 6 days. Back on Earth, world leaders were already mobilizing. Every military base on the planet went to high alert. Nuclear arsenals that had been built to fight each other were suddenly being prepared for an enemy none of them had ever imagined. "We need to work together," President Hayes announced to the Emergency Assembly of World Leaders. "Every nation, every resource, everything we have." "Agreed," replied Premier Chin of the Pacific Alliance. "We will share all our defensive technologies. The European Federation is already mobilizing our space assets," added Chancellor Mueller. For the first time in human history, every major power was working toward the same goal: survival. Veltar watched the human response with growing amazement. Most species, when faced with the news of the Kithera, either fled their homeworlds or descended into chaos. But humans were doing something he had never seen before. They were getting ready to fight. "You should evacuate your planet," Veltar suggested gently. "Spread your population across multiple systems. Some might survive that way." Jake looked at the alien ambassador with something that might have been pity. "You don't understand humans very well, do you?" "I confess I do not." "We don't run," Jake said simply. "This is our home. Our families are here. Our history is here. If something wants to take it from us, they're going to have to go through us first." Veltar felt something he had never experienced in his 3 centuries of life. Hope mixed with terror. Hope that perhaps these primitive beings might surprise everyone. Terror at what they might become if they survived. On Earth below, factories were already retooling to build weapons. Scientists were working around the clock to understand the small technological samples Veltar had provided. Military commanders were developing strategies for a war unlike any in human history. The countdown to humanity's greatest test had begun. 23 days to prepare for an enemy that had never known defeat. The galaxy was about to discover what happened when an unstoppable force met an immovable object. The world changed overnight in ways that would have been impossible just days before. Dr. Alan Cross had never imagined he would be working in a converted airplane hangar with scientists from every nation on Earth, all focused on the small collection of alien technology that Ambassador Veltar had been allowed to share. "The power source is incredible," Dr. Cross muttered as he examined a device no bigger than his thumb that generated more energy than a nuclear reactor. Around him, teams of engineers and physicists worked frantically to understand technology that was centuries ahead of human science. "We don't need to understand it completely," announced Dr. Kate Adams, the lead weapons engineer. "We just need to figure out how to make it explode." 3 time zones away, Commander Rachel Stone stood in the newly constructed Global Defense Command Center, watching displays that showed military preparations happening all across the planet. Ancient enemies were sharing their most classified secrets. The Americans had given the Russians their stealth technology. The Russians had shared their hypersonic missile designs. The Chinese had opened their quantum computing research to everyone. Status report. Commander Stone called out, "Orbital defense platforms are 60% complete," reported Major Tim Walsh. "We're using every rocket on the planet to get them into position. Ground-based weapons? Every nation is converting their nuclear arsenals. Instead of targeting each other, they're all aimed at the sky now." Commander Stone nodded grimly. In the past 3 weeks, humanity had achieved something that politicians and peacekeepers have been trying to accomplish for centuries: complete global cooperation. It had taken the threat of extinction to finally unite the species. In an underground laboratory beneath the Swiss Alps, Dr. Gary Wolf was making a discovery that would change everything. He had been studying the biological samples that Veltar had provided, comparing them to human physiology, when he noticed something extraordinary. "This can't be right," he muttered, checking his readings for the 5th time. Dr. Lisa Park, who had been assigned to work with him, looked over his shoulder at the data. "What is it?" "Human adrenaline response," Dr. Wolf said, his voice filled with amazement. "Compared to every other species in the galactic database, our fight-or-flight response is off the charts." "What does that mean?" "It means that when humans get scared or angry, our bodies produce chemicals that make us faster, stronger, and more focused than any other known species. We're literally built for combat stress in ways that other aliens aren't." Dr. Park stared at the data in wonder. No wonder Veltar seemed surprised by our reaction to the news. "There's more," Dr. Wolf continued, pulling up another screen. "Our pattern recognition abilities, our ability to see connections and adapt to new situations. They're also exceptional. Most species in the database follow predictable behavioral patterns. Humans are essentially walking chaos generators." Meanwhile, in orbit around Earth, a massive construction project was taking shape. Every space agency on the planet had pooled their resources to build defensive platforms around their homeworld. Engineer Roy Banks floated in a spacesuit, welding together components that had been launched from a dozen different countries. "How are we doing on the energy shields?" asked Captain Amy Turner, who had been assigned to command one of the orbital platforms. "We're getting there," Roy replied through his helmet radio. "The alien power cells are incredible, but we're still figuring out how to make them work with our systems." 20 days, Captain Turner muttered. 20 days to build a defense grid that can stop something that's never been stopped before. Back on Earth, General Paul Rivers was coordinating what might have been the most complex military operation in human history. Every branch of every military was working together, sharing resources and expertise in ways that would have been unthinkable just a month ago. "Sir, we have a problem," announced Colonel Lisa Martinez, looking up from her communication station. "Only one." General Rivers asked dryly. "The civilians, sir, they're not evacuating to the bunkers. They're volunteering to fight." General Rivers walked over to look at her reports. All across the planet, ordinary people were refusing to hide. Teachers were learning to use weapons. Farmers were converting their equipment into improvised tanks. Retired soldiers were coming out of retirement to train volunteers. "How many?" he asked. "Last count shows over 2 billion people have volunteered for military service, sir. We don't have equipment for that many people." "Then we'll make equipment." General Rivers decided. "If they want to fight, we'll find a way to let them fight." In Japan, elderly engineer Hiroshi Tanaka was working with a team of designers to convert civilian manufacturing into military production. Car factories were building armored vehicles. Electronics companies were making communication equipment. Even toy manufacturers were producing components for weapon systems. "The entire planet is becoming one giant military base," Hiroshi observed his assistant. "Is that enough?" she asked. "We're about to find out." Ambassador Veltar watched all of this preparation with growing amazement and concern. He had been given quarters at the Global Defense Command Center, and every day brought new surprises. The humans were doing things that defied everything he knew about warfare and civilization. "Commander Stone," Veltar said, approaching the human officer, "I must ask you something that troubles me." "What is it, Ambassador?" "Your people are preparing weapons that violate several interstellar treaties. Chemical agents, biological weapons, nuclear devices designed to cause maximum environmental damage. These are considered war crimes by galactic law." Commander Stone looked at the alien diplomat with tired eyes. "Ambassador, with respect, your galactic laws were written by people who never face extinction. When someone comes to wipe out your entire species, you use every weapon you can find. But the environmental damage alone could make your planet uninhabitable. Better an uninhabitable planet that's still ours than a perfect planet strip mined by aliens," Commander Stone replied. "We'd rather die fighting than live as slaves." Veltar felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. In his 3 centuries of diplomatic service, he had never encountered a species willing to destroy their own world to prevent its capture. It was simultaneously horrifying and inspiring. "There is something else," Veltar said quietly. "The Council has been monitoring your preparations through long-range sensors. They are disturbed by what they see." "Why?" "You are preparing for total war in ways that most species never consider. Your weapons, your tactics, your complete disregard for conventional rules of engagement. It frightens them." Commander Stone managed a grim smile. "Good. If it frightens them, maybe it will frighten the Kithira too." As the days counted down, humanity's preparations reached a fever pitch. Children were evacuated to deep underground shelters, while every adult capable of holding a weapon prepared to fight. Scientists worked around the clock to adapt alien technology. Military commanders developed strategies that had never been tested. Dr. Cross finally achieved a breakthrough when he managed to reverse engineer enough of the alien power cells to create energy weapons. They were crude compared to what Veltar described as galactic standard, but they were far more advanced than anything humans had possessed just weeks before. "We have enough power cells for maybe 10,000 weapons," Dr. Cross reported to the Defense Council. "It's not enough," General Rivers replied. "Then we'll make it enough," announced Dr. Adams. "I've been working on something special." She led them to a testing facility where a massive device sat waiting. It looked like a cross between a nuclear reactor and a particle accelerator, with alien components integrated into human engineering. "What is it?" Commander Stone asked. "I called the planet Cracker," Dr. Adams said with a smile that was equal parts genius and madness. "If we can't stop them conventionally, we'll make them regret coming here." Veltar stared at the device in horror. "That weapon could shatter your planet's crust." "Only if we set it to maximum power," Dr. Adams replied cheerfully. "We're hoping we won't need to do that." As the final week approached, humanity was as ready as they could be in such a short time. Orbital defense platforms ringed the planet. Ground-based weapons pointed skyward from every continent. Underground factories continued producing weapons and ammunition, and 2 billion volunteers waited for the chance to defend their home. Veltar sent his final report to the Galactic Council. "The humans are not what we expected. They have united their entire species for war in ways I have never seen. Their weapons violate every civilized convention. Their tactics appear to be based on controlled insanity. I no longer believe this will end the way our models predict." The response in the Council was swift and clear. "Evacuate immediately. Do not remain to observe the battle. The Kithira allow no witnesses." But Veltar made a decision that surprised even himself. He deleted the message and stayed with the humans. If they were going to face the impossible, he would face it with them. The Kithira swarm dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the solar system like a plague of metal locusts. Ambassador Veltar had tried to prepare the humans for what they would see, but nothing could have readied them for the reality of it. Thousands of ships stretched across space, some as small as fighters, others the size of moons. They moved with perfect coordination, their biomechanical hulls pulsing with an organic rhythm that made them look more like swimming creatures in spacecraft. Each ship was connected to the others through invisible threads of the hive mind, creating a single massive intelligence focused on one goal: consumption. "Jesus Christ," whispered Captain Jake Morrison from the International Space Station, now converted into a forward observation post. "There are so many of them." In the Global Defense Command Center, every screen showed the same horrifying sight. The Kithira fleet was so vast that it blocked out the stars behind it. Commander Rachel Stone felt her heart sink as she watched the sensor readings pour in. "Estimated count?" she asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to know. "Over 10,000 individual ships, ma'am," reported Major Tim Walsh, his voice hollow. "The largest ones are reading as bigger than our biggest cities." General Paul Rivers stood beside them, watching the display with the calm expression of a man who had always known this day might come. "All stations, this is command. The enemy has arrived. Execute Defense Plan Alpha." Across the solar system, humanity's hastily built defense network came online. Orbital platforms powered up their alien-enhanced weapons. Ground-based missile batteries armed themselves with nuclear-tipped rockets. Deep space communication arrays began broadcasting on every frequency, carrying a simple message to the approaching swarm: "This is Earth. You are not welcome here. Turn back now." The Kithira didn't even slow down. Their response came in the form of a massive energy pulse that swept through the solar system like a tidal wave. Every human communications satellite went dead. Space stations lost contact with Earth. The carefully coordinated defense network suddenly found itself blind and scattered. "They're jamming everything," reported Dr. Alan Cross from his underground laboratory. "All our long-range communications are down." "Switch to backup systems," Commander Stone ordered. "Optical lasers, radio bursts, anything that can get through." But the Kithira were already moving. The swarm split into multiple formations, each one larger than humanity's entire space fleet. Some headed directly for Earth, while others moved to secure the outer planets and eliminate any possible escape routes. Captain Amy Turner commanded Orbital Defense Platform 7, one of 12 stations positioned around Earth's equator. Each platform carried the most advanced weapons humanity could build, a combination of human engineering and reverse-engineered alien technology that had never been tested in real combat. "Target the lead ships," she ordered her crew. "Fire on my mark." The platform's main weapon charged up with a sound like thunder being compressed into a bottle. Energy readings spiked as alien power cells fed more energy into the system than any human weapon had ever handled. "Mark." A beam of pure energy lanced out from the platform. crossing the space between Earth and the approaching Kithier fleet in seconds. It struck the lead ship dead center, and for a moment, Amy thought they had achieved the impossible. The Kithier vessel staggered under the impact, its biomechanical hull rippling like water. Chunks of alien metal spiraled away into space. But even as Amy watched in amazement, the damaged sections began to regenerate, growing back like healing flesh. Target destroyed the outer hull, but it's regenerating, reported her weapons officer. Estimated time to full repair, 3 minutes. Keep firing, Amy ordered. Don't let it heal. Across Earth's orbital zone, 11 other platforms were doing the same thing. Beams of energy stabbed out into space, striking the Kithier ships again and again. Some shots missed as the alien vessels began evasive maneuvers. Others found their mark, causing damage that was impressive but temporary. The Kithier response was swift and overwhelming. The lead ships suddenly grew what looked like organic cannons in their hulls, and return fire began raining down on the human positions. The first strike hit platform 4 with the force of a nuclear explosion. The entire structure vanished in a ball of green fire, taking its crew of 200 volunteers with it. Platform 9 lasted long enough to get off one more shot before a Kithier weapon tore it apart from the inside, somehow making its own power core turn against it. We're losing the orbital grid, Major Walsh reported, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. Hold positions. Commander Stone ordered through the communication system. Make them pay for every inch. Captain Turner watched as more platforms died around her, but she kept firing. The humans had one advantage the Kithier hadn't expected. They were absolutely refusing to retreat. Every shot was aimed with the desperate precision of people who knew they were fighting for the survival of their species. "Ma'am, we've got incoming," her tactical officer announced. 12 Kithier fighters heading straight for us. "Let them come," Amy replied, switching her platform's weapons to rapid-fire mode. "Roy, get those point-of-fence systems online." Engineer Roy Banks had spent the last month converting human missile defense systems to work with alien power sources. Now he watched his improvised weapons track the approaching Kithier fighters with deadly precision. Firing! The space around Platform 7 erupted in explosions as human and alien technology combined to create a wall of destruction. 3 Kithier fighters vanished immediately, caught off guard by the unexpected intensity of the defensive fire. The others began evasive maneuvers that were graceful and deadly, but something strange was happening. The Kithier fighters were moving in patterns that seemed confused, almost hesitant. Their usually perfect coordination was showing cracks. "Are they having trouble with our tactics?" Roy asked, watching the display with professional interest. "Looks like it," Amy replied. "They're used to fighting civilized opponents who follow predictable patterns. We're not civilized." To prove her point, she did something that would have horrified any proper military academy. She rammed Platform 7 directly into the largest Kithier fighter. The collision destroyed both craft in a spectacular explosion that lit up half of Earth's orbital zone. But in those final moments, Amy's crew managed to download all their combat data to the surviving platforms, giving them crucial information about Kithier weaknesses. Down on Earth, the battle was just beginning. The first wave of Kithier landing craft began entering the atmosphere, their hulls glowing like falling stars as they descended toward major population centers. Pilot Nick Davis led a squadron of modified fighter jets to intercept them. The planes had been equipped with the few alien weapons humanity could produce, and their pilots had been trained in tactics that no Air Force manual would ever recommend. Remember, Nick broadcast to the squadron, "These things expect us to fight fair. We're not going to do that." The human fighters dove toward the Kithier landing craft like angry hornets. Instead of engaging in traditional dogfighting, they used the Earth's atmosphere against their enemies. Nick led his squadron through a cloud bank, then emerged directly underneath the alien formation. "Now!" he shouted. Every human fighter fired at once, not at the Kithier ships, but at the ground beneath them. The massive explosions created an atmospheric shockwave that sent several alien craft tumbling out of control. Those that tried to compensate found themselves flying directly into Nick's second surprise, a missile barrage fired from ground-based launchers hidden in the mountains. "They're adapting," Nick's wingman reported as the surviving Kithira craft began to spread out and approach from multiple directions. "So are we," Nick replied, pulling his fighter into a dive that would have been suicide against any human opponent. "Follow me down." He led the Kithira fighters into a canyon where Dr. Kate Adams had prepared one of her special surprises. As the alien ships followed the humans into the narrow space, hidden charges detonated on both sides of the canyon walls. The falling rocks crushed 2 Kithira fighters and damaged 3 others. But more importantly, the dust and debris confused their sensors, allowing the human pilots to escape, while their enemies were effectively blinded. "This is incredible," Vel Tar said from his position in the command center, watching the battle unfold on multiple screens. "Your people are using tactics I have never seen before." "We learn fast," Commander Stone replied, coordinating the defense from her position. "And we cheat." "Cheat?" "We don't fight fair. We use the environment. We sacrifice pieces to take bigger pieces. And we never do what the enemy expects us to do." As if to prove her point, reports were coming in from around the globe of human defenders doing the impossible. In Russia, tank crews were ramming Kithira ground vehicles and detonating their ammunition at close range. In Japan, civilians were using industrial equipment to drop buildings on top of landing craft. In Brazil, military engineers had turned the Amazon rainforest into a massive trap that was swallowing entire Kithira formations. But perhaps the most shocking report came from Antarctica, where Dr. Lisa Park had been overseeing a special project. "Command," this is Dr. Park. "Operation Ice Storm is ready for deployment." "What exactly is Operation Ice Storm?" Commander Stone asked. "We've been drilling into the ice sheet with mining equipment, enhanced with alien power sources. If we detonate charges in the right sequence, we can trigger a control collapse that will bury anything on the southern continent under several billion tons of ice. And if you miscalculate, then we cause an ice age. But at least it will be our ice age." The battle raged across Earth and in space above, with both sides taking heavy losses. But something unprecedented was happening. The Kithira were slowing down. For the first time in their recorded history, they were encountering resistance that was costing them more than they had anticipated. In the depths of space, the Kithira hive mind was experiencing something it had never felt before: uncertainty. These humans were fighting in ways that made no tactical sense, yet they were inflicting real damage. Every victory came at a higher cost than predicted. The swarm began to recalculate its approach. Perhaps these strange creatures will require a different strategy after all. The first Kithira ground forces that emerged from their landing craft were 8 feet tall and built like nightmares made real. Their chitinous exoskeletons gleamed with an oily sheen, and their 4 arms each ended in weapons that could disintegrate matter at the molecular level. They had conquered 17 worlds using these same ground troops, and every previous enemy had either fled in terror or died quickly. They were not prepared for Sergeant Tony Clark. Tony had been a Chicago police officer before the aliens came. Now he crouched in the ruins of what used to be a shopping mall, leading a squad of 12 volunteers who 3 weeks ago had been teachers, mechanics, and office workers. None of them should have been able to stand against creatures that had defeated advanced alien civilizations. "Remember what we practiced," Tony whispered into his radio. "These things expect us to run or fight them head-on. We're going to do neither." The Kithira squad moved through the rubble with mechanical precision, their sensors sweeping for human life signs. They had landed in downtown Chicago with orders to establish a harvesting zone, and their hive mind was already calculating how many humans they could process per hour. What they found instead was a city that had been turned into a maze of death traps. The first Kithira warrior stepped on what looked like an ordinary piece of concrete. The improvised mine beneath it had been built from fertilizer, diesel fuel, and ball bearings, primitive by galactic standards, but devastatingly effective. The explosion tore the creature apart and sent shrapnel into 2 of its companions. "Now!" Tony shouted. His squad opened fire from concealed positions throughout the ruins. They were using a mixture of human and alien weapons, but more importantly, they were using them in ways that no military manual had ever described. Instead of aiming for center mass like proper soldiers, they targeted joints and sensors. Instead of holding defensive positions, they fired a few shots and immediately moved to new locations. The surviving Kythera tried to return fire, but their weapons were designed for conventional warfare against enemies who stayed in one place long enough to be targeted. The humans were everywhere and nowhere, appearing just long enough to cause damage before vanishing back into the rubble. "They're adapting to our tactics," reported Private First Class Danny Price, a former video game designer who had turned out to have a natural talent for asymmetric warfare. "So are we," Tony replied, pulling the pin on a grenade that Dr. Adams had enhanced with alien explosives. "Time for Phase 2. He threw the grenade not at the Kythera, but at a support beam he had weakened earlier. The explosion brought down half a building, burying 3 alien warriors under tons of concrete and steel. The remaining Kythera began to retreat, something their species had not done in living memory. But Tony wasn't finished with them yet. "Danny, activate the sprinkler system." "The what now?" "Trust me." Danny pressed a button on a device that looked like it had been built from spare parts and alien components. Throughout the ruins, hidden sprinklers began releasing what appeared to be ordinary water. The Kythera warriors walked through the spray without concern. Water was harmless to their biomechanical systems. What they didn't realize was that Dr. Gary Wolfe had spent the past week developing a chemical compound that would react with their specific biology. The results were immediate and horrifying. Where the modified water touched their exoskeletons, the Kythera armor began to dissolve. Creatures that seemed invulnerable moments before were suddenly screaming in harmonics that made the humans' teeth ache. Chemical warfare. Tony explained to his shocked squad members. They're used to energy weapons and explosives. They're not ready for good old-fashioned poison. Similar scenes were playing out all across the globe. In London, Dr. Helen Ross had turned the underground tunnel system into a network of ambush points where civilian volunteers using improvised weapons were taking down Kythera patrols. In Tokyo, retired soldiers were teaching teenagers how to use alien energy weapons in ways their original designers had never intended. But perhaps the most effective resistance was happening in the American Southwest, where Native American tribes had volunteered to fight using tactics that were older than recorded history. "They hunt like machines," observed Chief Joseph Running Bear, watching a Kythera patrol through binoculars. Always the same pattern, always the same approach. His warriors were spread across miles of desert, invisible in terrain they had known since childhood. When the Kythera came looking for human settlements to harvest, they found something else entirely, prey that had become predators. The attack came from all directions at once, but not in the way the aliens expected. Instead of gunfire, the first assault was psychological. Sounds echoed across the desert. Human voices calling out in languages the translation matrix couldn't handle. Strange rhythms that seemed to confuse the Kythera hive mind. "Their coordination is breaking down," reported Maria Santos, the former space station science officer who was now analyzing Kythera behavior patterns from a hidden observation post. She was right. The perfectly synchronized alien warriors were beginning to act independently, their hive-mind connection disrupted by sensory input it couldn't process. Some stopped moving entirely. Others began firing at shadows. That was when the real attack began. Warriors who had learned to hunt in this desert long, before humanity ever dreamed of space travel, emerged from hiding places that shouldn't have been able to conceal a rabbit, much less a human being. They carried weapons that ranged from traditional bows enhanced with alien energy cells to improvised explosives made from mining equipment. The Kythera found themselves fighting an enemy that didn't exist until it struck, then vanished again like smoke. Every rock could hide a sniper. Every shadow could conceal a bomb. The desert itself had become hostile to their presence. How are they doing this? Transmitted one Kythera warrior to the hive mind before a precisely placed arrow took out its primary sensor cluster. The hive mind had no answer. Back in Chicago, Tony's squad had been reinforced by volunteers from across the city. Teachers were carrying alien energy rifles. Firefighters were using their equipment to deploy chemical weapons. Even teenagers were contributing by running messages between resistance cells and maintaining the improvised communication networks that Dr. Cross had built from salvaged alien technology. We're getting reports from around the world. announced Dr. Park over the emergency broadcast system. The Kythera ground forces are taking casualties they never expected. They're pulling back from major population centers. But Tony knew this was just the beginning. Through his binoculars, he could see more landing craft descending from orbit, bigger ones, carrying what looked like heavy equipment. They're adapting, he told his squad. Time for us to adapt faster. The next phase of the ground war would test humanity's greatest strength, their ability to learn from their enemies and turn that knowledge into weapons. Engineer Roy Banks had been studying destroyed Kythera equipment for the past week, and his findings were about to change the entire conflict. Working in a hidden laboratory beneath the ruins of Detroit, he had discovered something that even Ambassador Veltar found hard to believe. Their communication system has a fatal flaw, Roy explained to the assembled resistance leaders via encrypted radio. Each drone is connected to a local control node, and each node is connected to a regional command ship. If we can disrupt the connection between any drone and its node, it becomes essentially brain dead. How do we disrupt it? Asked Commander Stone from her command bunker. Electromagnetic pulse, but it has to be precisely tuned to their specific frequency. I've built devices that can do it, but they only work at close range. How close? About 10 feet. The silence that followed spoke volumes. Getting within 10 feet of a Kythera warrior was essentially a suicide mission. I'll do it, volunteered Danny Price. Danny, no, Tony protested. Those things will tear you apart. Maybe, but if this works, we can start turning their own troops against them. Danny's mission became the template for resistance operations worldwide. Small teams of volunteers would get as close as possible to Kythera forces, deploy Roy's EMP devices, then retreat as quickly as possible while the disrupted aliens stumbled around like robots with dead batteries. The tactic was brutally effective, but it came at a terrible cost in human lives. For every successful disruption, 3 or 4 volunteers didn't make it home. But somehow, there were always more volunteers ready to take their place. Your people are insane, Veltar observed, watching the casualty reports come in. No, replied Commander Stone, her voice carrying a weight that spoke of decisions no one should have to make. We're desperate. There's a difference. The difference was becoming clear to the Kythera as well. Their ground forces, which had never faced serious resistance before, were being systematically dismantled by an enemy that seemed to care more about inflicting damage than about their own survival. But the aliens had one more card to play. As night fell across the battlefields of Earth, massive shapes began descending from orbit. Kythera command nodes, each one the size of a city block and carrying enough firepower to level continents. The real war was about to begin.